In this movie, I'll show you how to export color separations. And again, this is something you might do if you're handing off the file to a commercial print house. And the idea is that you want an independent separation for each and every ink. So in my case, I've got a 3-ink job right here, 3 spot colors in all. So I'm going to need a total of 3 separations. And to create those, I'll go up to the File menu and once again choose the Print command. Or you can press Control-P or Command-P on the Mac. Now, anytime that you want to send a job out to a commercial printer, you want to set the printer to Adobe PDF as opposed to some local printer. And then you want the media size to be set to custom. Now, if you end up with something like this where the page size is a little bigger than the artwork, then you can switch it back so that it's exactly the same size as the art by switching to a different page size. I'll just go ahead and choose A4. And then you want to scroll up the list to custom and choose it. And that will go ahead and scale the paper size so that it exactly matches the artboard. Now we need a little bit of extra room for the printer marks. So I'm going to add 100 to both the width and the height values here just by entering plus 100. And we'll end up with this effect here. All right, now I'll go ahead and switch to marks and bleeds and I'll turn on all printer marks. And this is generally a great idea anytime you're going to send a job to a commercial print house. All right, now I'm going to take the offset value up to 18 points, let's say, and we don't need a bleed. Notice my document bleed settings are set to 0, and that's because I'm not printing to the edge of the artboard. All right, now what we want to do is move on to output. So go ahead and click on output in the left-hand list. And this time we're looking for separations host-based, which means that Illustrator is going to generate the separations for us. If we didn't want separations, we'd go with composite, by the way, which is what we saw in the previous movie. That's where you just go ahead and export a full color version of your artwork. But as I say, we want separations, so go ahead and choose separations host-based. If you happen to know the resolution of your printer, you should go ahead and choose it here. I'm going to go with 1200 dpi, that's dots per inch. And now notice the first value reads 100 lpi. That's lines per inch, incidentally, and it indicates the number of halftone dots per linear inch. So the first number is halftone dots, lines per inch, and the second number is resolution, which is measured in dots per inch. All right, now you want to make sure Convert All Spot Colors to Process is turned off. We specifically, for this example, want to print spot colors and nothing more. And then you can turn on Overprint Black if you want to. But what that's going to do is it's going to overprint the black ink as opposed to the Pantone black. So in our case, it's really not going to do us any good because as you can see here, process cyan, magenta, yellow, and black go unused, which is why they don't have little printer marks in front of them. But if for some reason you decide you wanted to overwrite that, you can click in this column to force the output, for example, of a cyan separation. That's not what I want, however, so I'll go ahead and turn that off. And somehow I managed to accidentally not select the resolution value there. So I'll go ahead and choose it. And now notice that we're seeing the frequency, which is the number of halftone dots per linear inch. It's set to 100 lpi. Here's the problem, though. I want you to see this. Notice that by default, process cyan is going to print at 15 degrees. Process magenta is going to print at 75 degrees. Yellow is going to be at 0 degrees because you can barely see it. It's so light. And then black is going to be at 45 degrees. Now, the idea here is that whenever you have halftone dots, you need to vary the angle of those dots on a separation by separation basis. Because if you don't, if they're all the same angle, then they're not going to mingle together properly. Compare this to my spot colors right here, which are all set to 45 degrees. Now, that would be great if everything in this document was a solid color. However, I've got halftone dots going on in the form of these gradients right here. So any place where I have soft transitions, that is going to turn into a halftone pattern. So what I need to do is modify these values. And the best way to work, generally speaking, the most brain dead thing to do is just take a cue from the cyan, magenta, yellow, and black values right there. So notice cyan is set to 15 degrees, magenta is set to 75 degrees. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the angle of Pantone 285, which is that shade of blue. I'm going to change it to 15 degrees. And then I'm going to change the angle of Pantone 325, which is that shade of green, to 75 degrees. And I'll leave the angle of black set to 45 degrees. And now I'll go ahead and click on the print button once again. And then I would save the file as this guy right here, logo separations, which again, I've created in advance. So I'll just go ahead and cancel out here. And I'll switch over to Acrobat Pro. And you can see that we now have a total of 3 separations. One for Pantone 285, which is that shade of blue, another for Pantone 325, which is that bluish green, and then a final one for Pantone Black 6. Now, you might look at these and say, well, why in the world do they all appear black? And that's because it's up to the printer to add the color. Your separations are always going to appear black where you have ink and white where you don't. And one more thing I want you to note here. I'll go ahead and press Control plus a bunch of times. That's Command plus on a Mac. And notice we're looking at the original document name. It's got a screen frequency of 100 LPI, that's lines per inch. 15 degrees is going to be the angle of the halftone dots. Here's the date and the time. And here's the color right there, Pantone 285. And so if I were to advance to the next page, you'll see that the color name scoots over to the right and changes to Pantone 325. And then if I advance to the final page, it reads Pantone Black 6. And then the great thing is once the ink is actually added and you print this document, you're going to see all 3 of these separations next to each other printed in the color of that particular ink. And that's how you export color separations as a PDF file using Adobe Illustrator.